Hey, I got a problem. What's up? Homework? Worse. Biology class. That's serious. What's going on? Well, in biology class today, my teacher was talking about evolution and different types of mutations and how those took place over millions of years. But I was reading earlier in my Bible, and in Genesis it said that God created the heavens and the earth, and those just they don't compute in my mind. I'm struggling with that. Well, who told you that those things have to compete with each other? Pretty much everyone says that, right? I mean, like, that's what science says, and that's what, all of our teachers say at school. That tension usually begins with a false choice that you've been given. A false choice? What do you mean? Yes, Christianity doesn't ask you to stop thinking. Jesus said to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. Your mind's not the enemy of your faith, bub. Then why does science feel so opposed to Christianity? I don't get it. Science itself is not opposed to Christianity. Science studies the natural world that we're living in. The conflict usually begins when someone adds a worldview on top of that science. What's that mean? Well, it means that evidence does not interpret itself. People interpret evidence through what they already believe about the reality that they're living in. Can you give me an example of that? Well, take, for example, evolution. You came in talking about evolution. So when someone says evolution, you first need to ask, what is it that they mean by the word evolution? Well, I thought evolution was just evolution. That is usually how it's presented, isn't it? But the word can describe different claims. Microevolution means changes within the populations of a living species. Like what? Well, a good example of this is actually how we breed dogs. We breed them because we want different traits to actually pass along to the puppies, right? Another good example is actually Charles Darwin. He studied finches that were living in different parts of the world, and he noticed that their beaks actually were different because of the different environments that they were living in. And really, today we can look at bacteria, and we see that certain bacteria can become extremely resilient to different antibiotics that we use whenever we're trying to treat them. So Christians can just accept that? Yes. Those changes are observable. We see it in science today. They show that living things can adapt. Well, the larger claim is that every form of life descended from one original organism through completely unguided natural processes. That claim goes far beyond observing bacteria adapt or animals developing different traits. It makes a claim about the entire history of how life began here on our planet. But don't scientists use fossils and DNA to support that? They do. The question is whether the evidence demands their conclusion or not. But doesn't it? Not necessarily. Two scientists can examine the exact same DNA, the same fossil record, and the mechanisms within cells and interpret that completely different from each other. How? One begins with the belief that only matter and natural processes exist. That person sees an unguided process in how things develop. Another one believes in an intelligent creator, and that person sees evidence of that design throughout creation. So they're looking at the same evidence, just starting with different beliefs then. The evidence is shared, and the interpretations are very different from each other. Okay, but if science explains how it works, doesn't that mean that God's unnecessary? Not at all. If you understand how your phone works, did Samsung stop existing? If Samsung could figure out why my battery dies at 12%, yeah, I believe in miracles. Okay, fair enough. But understanding the mechanism doesn't eliminate the maker. It didn't get rid of Samsung. So explaining a process doesn't explain where a process came from. Exactly. Studying how DNA works does not prove that DNA arose without intelligence. Studying how the universe operates does not explain why the universe exists. Science can describe mechanisms, it cannot automatically remove the creator behind them. So wouldn't studying DNA push God completely out of the equation? Well, it may actually give you more reason to believe in design. Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth." That gives us a foundation. The universe is not here at random. Life is not meaningless. You and I, we're not an accident, man. How awesome is that? Okay, but what am I supposed to do? Like, really tell me what I'm supposed to do in class, because I don't want to be that kid who's always asking his teacher questions and annoying. You shouldn't, okay? You need to listen and learn, take good notes, and understand the evidence being presented to you. So I should just stay quiet? Not necessarily. I want you to ask respectful questions when appropriate. Like what? If your teacher explains natural selection, learn how natural selection actually works. That's good. That's science. However, if someone then says to you that natural selection exists and therefore God does not exist, I think you really need to ask whether the evidence actually proves that conclusion or not. Because talking about natural selection is actually science, but saying that God doesn't exist, that's not science. Exactly. Now you're using your brain. That is a philosophical conclusion. It's not something that you can observe through a microscope. So do I need to panic every time that evolution comes up in one of my classes? No, Christians should not be afraid of honest, truthful investigation. But what if what they're talking about challenges something that I believe? Especially then, strong faith does not run away from questions. It studies them carefully. Psalm 19:1 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God." The more deeply we study creation, the more reasons we have to stand in awe of our Creator. So the choice, you're telling me, is not really science or faith. No, the deeper question is, which worldview best explains the evidence? Then what can science actually answer? Science can study how the natural world operates. It examines cells, fossils, chemistry, and physical laws. It's very, very important for us as Christians to study science. What can it not answer then? Science cannot tell you why anything exists at all. It cannot tell you why truth matters. It can't tell you why human life has objective value. It can't tell you what your ultimate purpose is. So science can study life and tell us about life, but it really can't tell us why life matters. Exactly. The Bible answers that in Genesis 1:27. It says that humanity was created in the image of God. Your value, my value, it doesn't come from chemistry. It comes from our Creator. So next time I'm in biology class, is it okay if I share my faith, or do I need to hide it? No, I want you to be calm. Be curious, be respectful, and ask good questions. Learn the science. It's important for us as Christians to know the science. Examine the worldview, though, that's being presented to you behind the conclusions that they're giving to you. And I really want to encourage you, above all, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Science and faith are not enemies. Science studies God's creation. The real debate is not usually over the evidence itself. It's over the worldview that's being used to interpret the evidence. You do not have to choose between following Jesus and thinking deeply. You and I were created to do both. As always, I want you to live in the truth. I want to encourage you in your faith. I want you to stay anchored to Jesus Christ, your Savior. Have a good day.